Ассаламу алейкум.
Hello everyone.
Всем привет. Сегодня мы с командой QVANT взяли интервью у Абдула Шаропова, специалиста стартапов.
Today our team took an interview from startup specialist Abdul Sharopov. Can you please introduce yourself?
Yes, sir. My name is Abdul Sharopov. I studied philosophy, politics, economics at Yale in the US. It's based in Singapore. It's kind of connected to Yale University in the US and National University of Singapore. And these days I work with startups as an investor for Alka Ventures. It's a $10 million fund based in Tashkent. We've invested in 15 startups already, up to $250,000 each. And it's been going quite well. I've been based in Tashkent now for the past 2 years, and working mainly with understanding the startups and the problems, trying to find the ones that can fit what we're looking for to and invest in them in their future. And so that's pretty much kind of a quick bit about myself.
What is a startup for you?
A startup for us is a team that's building some technology-based product to solve some problem. Simply put, it can come in many different forms. Overall, we're really looking for startups that focus on financial technology and AI and just solving people's problems. I think startups are how we ultimately just bring in new innovations to change the way we do things. Because it's great to invest in traditional businesses, but overall, I think it's always nice to be looking into what's possible with new technology in the future.
Why to work in a startup?
So I think startups can be quite inspiring in terms of their vision and the mission that they want for the future. What we've seen is that startups can grow very fast. So when you work for a startup, you have the potential to grow with them and grow your responsibilities and your salary and the amount of financial gain that you get from the startup. Some startups can grow from nothing, like a small team, to $1 billion company in 4 years. We had a few startups that I worked with, my mentor who invests in startups. He's had a few outcomes like that. So I think that's very exciting because if you work in traditional business, you don't have that kind of fast-paced growth. But it's definitely has some risks. But I think for the upside, for a lot of people, it's a place where you can get a lot of new skills and try lots of new things. And ultimately, you're building something new that didn't exist before. And if it works out well, you can impact millions of people.
And why do you think people should invest in startups?
People should invest because, like I said, it can grow very well. It can, make a lot of money. Ultimately, that's the key thing, for an investor. And that's what we look for as well. For example, one of the startups we invested in a year ago, it's already went up 4 times in valuation. That means we've quadrupled our money, simply put. So another startup that we invested in with another fund, also had a great outcome. We reached $1 billion in 4 years. And but on top of that, besides financial, you can kind of rest assured that if it works out, what you're enabling is something new for the economy, something new for a lot of people. That this is gonna just impact a lot of people, solve a problem in some way. I think a lot of problems that we have in Uzbekistan can really be improved on and kind of solved with startups.
Who can work in a startup and how?
So startups need a lot of different skills. It's not just developers. Ultimately they're based on technology, but it doesn't have to be just a programmer. These days, even to start a startup, for example, you can use lots of no-code tools. Whereas you don't need to actually know how to program to build something new, to just test out your idea whether you want to use it. And you can just look it up. Just look up no code, for example. That's how you start. But ultimately, if you're so you don't need to be a programmer. If you are a programmer, that's great. But ultimately, just that being a programmer itself is not enough. You need to be focused on the sales, because ultimately you are trying to make sure people buy the new product you have, because that's how you can survive and stay afloat as a business. Both sides are very important. Both people who are good at sales and marketing, as well as development. And on top of that, you need people who are great with design, so that you can build a great user experience for the product that they're creating. And on top of that, people who can manage the projects would be great product and project managers. There's a variety of skills. It's not just one type of thing, and it's always great to have a mixed team with a lot of different experiences.
And what are some of the challenges you have faced as a startup investor?
Key thing is finding great startups. Ultimately that's what we're here to do. To invest in them. And so if we're unable to find ones that meet our criteria, that's the biggest challenge ultimately. So that's why we're working now on a startup studio where we kind of get more involved in being kind of a co-founder into new types of like startup ideas and different types of projects. So we like to kind of fix that, because I think there's a lot of simple mistakes that a lot of people make because it's not a very intuitive approach. So it's very counterintuitive to do a startup, and it's something that doesn't come naturally to a lot of people. So maybe we can come in with that and have them focus on the right things that make a startup successful.
What advice can you give to those who are interested in launching a startup?
I think there's a big misconception amongst people here that a startup is just about planning and making a big plan. And what I see often is they want to make a perfect product, and then they launch like a year later, and they have like this kind of big long roadmap for things. And ultimately, they also decide on very kind of on ideas that maybe are too common or they just saw somewhere else. What I recommend is actually you should think about launching as quickly as possible, because ultimately startups and ideas are about testing some hypothesis, right? And so you have some idea. You should call that idea a hypothesis, because hypotheses are meant to be tested, right? You want to see whether your hypothesis, will people accept that in the market? Like you build something very simple, so like you said before about using a no code, then you build your no code product, in 2 weeks to a month, and then launch that. You should be able to launch that quickly, and then get people's feedback, and it should then you should be able to work from there. Kind of if people want to use your product, or do they have suggestions for how to change things? That's pretty much the best way to take this, because that improves the way your timing is going to be. Because a lot of startups they spend at least a year before they get any feedback, and by then they're quite exhausted with building. And so then if people don't like the initial the way the product looks, and most likely it's not going to be the perfect product anyway, right? Like you spend a year, it's not going to be a perfect product, so they're going to be demotivated. And what I see very often is that they end up kind of failing or giving up on the project. So what I recommend is take things try to do things kind of more focused. Don't try to do a very complex perfect product. Do something that's a very simple kind of you're answering some question. And initially start with something like a Telegram bot, something much more simple. You want to make it very simple for someone to try out what you built. If you're trying to solve some problem of tech, no need to go for an app initially. There's a lot of bots can be quite powerful these days, so that's another recommendation I'd give if you want to launch something. Try a bot, launch within a month, and think deeply about the idea. Or not even so deeply, because it's and try not to copy what you see on the market, a lot of these food delivery or e-commerce things. I think they're not. It's hard to make it work. It's impossible at this point. So focus maybe more on things that are businesses can pay for. Something that adds value to a business, something that that's solving a problem for them. Because ultimately, the startup is about if you solve a problem for someone, they will pay you money for it pretty much, and that's how you get started. Once you have the initial traction, it keeps your motivation going, and based on that, you can be able to fundraise. Because ultimately, what we're looking for is if you have a product and you have some sales, we are very interested in considering you for investment, and maybe following you along and seeing your journey as a founder. So that's pretty much the key things to consider when you think about launching startups. What I might recommend to use for people who want to do startups is Flutterflow. It's a no-code platform that lets you build apps as you would, make a PowerPoint presentation. It's just drag and drop, no code at all, and it's used by pretty notable companies like Rakuten, a big e-commerce company, Deloitte, and Toshiba. And there's a demo on the website. They show you how you can make an OpenAI chatbot, and an e-commerce app, and a task management app, and you can even kind of view them and copy them and try to make one of yourself, it's like that, pretty easily. So even people like Google recommended. You can connect it with code if you want. You can have multi-language, and pretty much everything is customizable. There's no limiting factor. You can do a lot of things with it. Even one startup here, they built an app that they just launched through this. and they were able to get initial customers and initial users just using this type of no-code platform. And the best part of all is, for example, you build with this, you can then take it to put on the Play Store and the App Store. And once you have some users and you want to hire a proper team of good developers, you can just download the code and just give it to your developers. And it's a great way to start off with your startup. And the best part of all, well, I mean, there's a lot of great parts. The best thing is actually it's totally free to use. You can just use it to start any kind of project. And when you want to launch it to the Play Store App Store, it's about $50 a month. So $50 a month compared to paying like a couple $1,000s a month for an engineer or like a team of engineers to build your app. It's a clear case of what's possible these days. I haven't. Why did you guys have this? Sorry, is this your phone? Yeah. Keeps locking. Oh my god, it's not locking. You're getting cold. It's not a contact. Code platform that lets you build startup. Yeah.